Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the greatest show on earth. Yes, Greg Anthony here, the Investigative Journal. I say that because you're not going to get this information anywhere else. The Vatican-led New World Order, all its tentacles. The reason why America is turning into a socialistic then fascist state. The plan was to take it over early, and they did that with the Constitution of the United States, seemingly a document that gives all of us freedom. But in the end, the real major issue in the Constitution was to allow the Catholic Church to do business in America under the Freedom of Religion Clause. That was a sneaky way of getting in here, and look how they've grown from one diocese to now the tentacles stretch out all over America, and nobody knows what's going on. Oh yeah, on this 4th of July, well, it's tomorrow, right? Many people will be celebrating the freedoms of the United States. I will, of course, be celebrating that maybe somebody listened to this show and understand really what's going on behind the scenes. It is no secret that all of a sudden in Congress you're hearing the Democratic Socialist Party, you're hearing Trump say they should just call themselves the Socialist Party. You're hearing idiotic statements by Ocasio-Cortez, a plant, a Jesuit plant most likely, spouting off all this socialism in America, while at the same time our borders are being invaded. They're pushing people in here that are going to accept anything. Anything's better than poverty. And so when the powers that be will, set forth this situation of giving everything free, will be nothing like Venezuela in 10 years. And did you hear some of these socialists? They say that if we don't do anything about climate change, the world's going to end in 12 years. Boy, I'll tell you, the Jesuits know how to do this. They started socialism in the 16th century with the Paraguay reductions. Go read about it. So who do you think knows more about it than anything? And when you start putting together the pieces of the puzzle, putting together all of the things that have happened, you will see when I say the Vatican-led New World Order and the Jesuits are involved in this, I'm not wrong. Yes, and that's why you're not going to hear it anywhere in the mainstream or on the alternative, because they all work for the Vatican and the Jesuits. They all work together. And what better way than to have spies all over the world than to have them go there under the guise of Jesus Christ? Yes, and that's exactly what these people are doing. It is insane, to be really honest with you, and I try to get to the bottom of it here. I was watching a show the other day on Edward Snowden. Probably forgotten about him, but I think it was back a number of years ago. Genius guy who told us all about how the NSA and everybody was spying on everybody. I've got a little piece of tape over my webcam because they have programs that can get into your life. They can go anywhere, do anything to anyone, and that's still going on today. And what happened when Snowden brought this out? Well, I think he's still in Moscow. And if he ever came here, he'd spend the rest of his life in jail for telling the truth. That all of these programs that are designed to what they'll tell you is to prevent terrorism are really designed to spy on you. Through your computer, through your cell phone, through anything. And they can do it through these sophisticated software programs that they've created with the CIA, NSA, and it is all over the world. And just watch that. I think there's a show on HBO called Snowden, and it'll refresh your memory on the police state, of surveillance state. Oh, the other day, this is interesting. I live in a place, I'm not going to give the location, but I have a back patio, right? And there's surveillance cameras for the place I live, and I thought it was on the street, but they inadvertently told me the surveillance camera covers my whole back patio. And when I went to the management and said, shut it off, you know what they said? We have to protect our residents. I say, yeah, what if I'd like a little bit of privacy when I go on my back patio? Insane. Well, that is modern day America, right? Modern day surveillance state. In the guise, see, the doggies don't even like it, in the guise of protecting you. When in fact, all they're going to do is kill you in the end. All right, today I really want to talk about the Mormon Church. And the reason I want to do that is I've been going back to some of my old shows and reviving them because they haven't been on YouTube. And I've made statements before, and we did research on the fact how the Jesuits infiltrate all of these different religions, how in some cases create them. And all right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Mormon religion through a guy named True Ott, True Ott, who has a good story to tell about it. And I think you'll find it quite interesting. And the real reason for showing this is that, you know, I mentioned a long time ago I learned about satanic worshiping in the Vatican when I lived in Rome, found out about it in other places such as, maybe in these Mormon cathedrals, whatever they call them, they're temples. And True Ott talks a little bit about that. I think I remember him doing that. But, you know, nobody believes it anyway. They think you're crazy when you say it. But anyway, you've got to really look at the connections to this religion as well as many others that have been infiltrated and perhaps even created by these diabolical Jesuits. So let's get to True Ott, going back a number of years on some of my old shows. And I think you'll enjoy it.
Who was excommunicated from the church, and he's going to explain this story to you. Let me mention this, that all these groups that I mentioned earlier, according to many people, have merged together. And all these groups have one visible human head. Many people say the Illuminati and the Jews are the problem, but we can show you, and through all my guests, and through all the interviews I had, that they really take their marching orders from the same mastermind, from the same human leader. And with the financial power of the Rothschilds behind Weissaup's Illuminati, we can show, I think beyond a reasonable doubt, that the Jesuits and the Catholic Church have an almost perfect cover to hide their operations from public view. And when investigators, like True Ott and others, try to go behind the veil of secrecy, behind the veil of these front organizations like the Illuminati, what they do is the Illuminati provides the perfect shield behind which these people can hide and behind which the investigators cannot penetrate. And with that, I want to bring on True Ott. How are you today?
Great, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and it's always a pleasure to get back to you because you've taught me a lot over the years about what really is going on in the LDS Church. It's caused me to have a lot of people criticize me because of it, but you know something? I firmly believe what you're saying is true because you base it on fact, you base it on history, and also you base it on certain people that you've interviewed in your church who actually have witnessed satanic worshiping going on. And I just wanted to get into the fact what we were talking about, this cover, how I've had on different pastors and talking about how basically most all major religions have been infiltrated. And we always try to lead back to Rome and talk about that. And I just wanted to get your view on what you found out regarding the Vatican and your church.
Well, yeah, there's most definitely a connection there in my research, and I wanted to just, by way of explanation, tell excommunication in my case came as a result of questions of writing letters and other pieces of trying to put this puzzle together. First and foremost, I got to declare this, that I did so loving this church and wanting to defend it as being divine and true. Nobody likes to have their base core beliefs challenged and pulled the rug out from underneath them. Nobody does. You yourself, in hearing your intro, Greg, I understand you're a Roman Catholic yourself, yet you're making accusations of great gravity here. But they need to be made if we want to ever unravel this puzzle and make concrete positive changes in this world. At least that's my perspective, okay? Yeah. Yes, I was excommunicated on charges of apostasy, and that's just so funny because the root word of apostasy, by the way, is postere, which means to seek for truth. Isn't it funny that an apostle is one who holds truth, as in the apostles of Christ? Yet an apostate is one who seeks for truth, but he's not wanted in a mainstream church. That once you find out the truth, they can't have you infecting the minds of the population. So they, what's really terrible is the way in which they use family and peer pressure to spread innuendo and lies, outright lies about your character, your morality, and it goes on and on. I constantly have to defend my purity, and that's really unfortunate to have to happen. But it's really funny too, Greg, and maybe it's just not an accident. Maybe it is just coincidence that the date today, the 20th of September, is tomorrow is the fall equinox, the autumn equinox, the first day of autumn. Now, many Mormons and even non-Mormons especially don't understand the significance of the fall equinox, September 21st, in the history of the Mormon Church. And it really is a sacred day. It's a sacred day to Mormons that are in the know. It's a sacred day to those practicing witchcraft and Satanism. Okay? It is Mabron, one of the black Sabbaths of witchcraft. Okay? In Mormon history, the September 21st was the day in which Joseph Smith went to the famous Hill Cumorah and there received from Angel Moroni his first vision or sight of the golden plates. He went back every September 21st, Mabron, to the Hill Cumorah as commanded by this angel, this being of light, okay? And eventually, after 4 years, did receive, according to his testimony, these mystical gold plates from which he translated and brought to the world the piece of literature called the Book of Mormon. Well, it's just, isn't it funny that if you study witchcraft, if you study the writings of Weishaupt, or however you want to call his last name, those Kabbalah masters, okay, they'll tell you, it's very easy to ascertain what goes on in the black magic circles on September 21st. It's a day of repentance. It's a day of releasing old prisoners. It's a day to bring new cleansing into the soul. And if you really look closely at the canonized scripture of the Mormon Church and the story of Joseph Smith, you find out that's exactly what he did on the evening of Mabron, the fall equinox, autumn equinox. He retired to his room to repent of his past indiscretions, to release old prisoners. And isn't it interesting that there appears to him this great being of light, the angel Moroni? If you go into the works of Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan, you also find some very interesting corollaries there, Greg. He lists there's actually a list of demons that work, that have dominion over certain specific equinoxes. I think this is really coincidental that there's a Mabroni demon that is identified there in ancient demonology. Now, is that a coincidence? Well, just by itself, perhaps it's not significant, but when you take it all into context, at least myself, I had to sit back and scratch my head a little bit and say, whoa. I talked to you on prior shows, we don't have a lot of time to go into it, about the links to the Catholic and the specific the Jesuit order and the early days of Brigham Young.
Well, listen, why don't we do this? I have to take a break right now. We're in the middle of a discussion here. He was once a devout Mormon, actually went on his mission, as many of the Mormons do, but began to start uncovering some things that basically caused the church to excommunicate him, things such as infiltration of the hierarchy of the church, and other things, including satanic worshiping in the temple in Utah. And this didn't sit good with the powers that be, True. I know they've made your life a living hell. And,
well, I need to reemphasize, Greg, I am just kind of the messenger. I have the open mind to listen to the people that have come forward making these claims. And just because somebody listens to somebody's story on this, and even though it does seem bizarre and why, kind of way out there, at least, I'm trying to piece together their motivation. Why would somebody come out and say such things that at the outset, at least to me personally, was outlandish and wild? Okay, right. So without the background of the other pieces of the puzzle fitting together, I would never give these people a second glance.
As a journalist. As a journalist, also talked to people that said the same thing about the Vatican, about child sacrificing and being witnesses there. And, at first I thought it was a little outlandish, but, someone had to listen to these people. And I'll tell you what, the similarities that what went on in the what these people told you about went on in the temple are very similar to what went on in the Vatican.
When you listen to a dozen different people from different areas of the country, different walks of life, that do not know each other and do not have chance to corroborate, you have to kind of at least shake your head and scratch it and say, what's really going on here? It gives some measure of credibility, though, again, I must emphasize, I have not personally witnessed such a thing, and I would personally hope and pray there is no such thing happening. But right. Just putting up that the question, is it a possibility, as a form of a trial balloon, if you will, the answer came very quickly, golly, you're out of here if you even dare to even consider such a thing. Now that action by itself is wrong and problematic, and I even submit satanic. To have that type of an attitude where you can't even question. The Mormon tradition is very, very, very steeped in obedience to church leaders, okay? And that's, as a young missionary and as a young lad growing up in the church, you're taught to respect authority. And that's not a bad thing in many instances. But yet there has to come a time where you have to think for yourself and not become a total mindless, brainless robot. And that's where I guess we began to butt heads. All right, I began to piece together.
What did you find out about your church that led you to believe that something is amiss, something isn't what they told you it was, as you were going through your mission and other things when you were young?
Well, a great example is a deal that happened to me while on my LDS mission. I was in upstate New York serving there, and I must admit that as the standards of missionaries go, I like to say I'm very, very successful. I had a lot of convert baptisms. I was elevated into the mission hierarchy to the post of an assistant to the president. We put on the Hill Cumorah pageant, which is world famous. And we did all of that work, but we had the ability and the opportunity to teach a young disaffected Catholic couple there outside of Syracuse, New York. Okay. They had an altercation with a priest. I believe there was something to do with some, sexual indiscretions, though I didn't get the full details. To make a long story short, this young couple had just had a young child. The woman had, in her baptismal interview period. Now get this. The Mormon structure is, okay, your baptism into the Mormon Church is designed to cleanse your sins and to rebirth you into a new life, basically, okay, as per Christ's instructions. But yet, in order to qualify for this baptism, you have to pass an interview. And one of the key questions is, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, have you ever had an abortion? Golly, if you have, you're just disqualified until you, at least back then in the 70s, in 78, okay, the protocol was you had to have the mission president and or a general authority intercede to get approval for baptism. Now, I tell you the story because this young, wonderful, beautiful Catholic family, the husband was extremely opposed to any form of abortion. He was active in the abortion clinics around the country. He was very much an activist, and his sweet wife had an abortion as a 16-year-old, reportedly as part of a date rape problem. Okay, first trimester, easy to take care of it. To me, not a sin worthy of another glance. Okay, she made a mistake. It was not her fault. She was raped, and I think it's an answer, perhaps. Okay. Against my vociferous screams, the mission president got involved, decided to tell the whole story to the husband, ended up in a very nasty divorce and a lawsuit against the church. I put that out because I saw right then early that structure and laws and rules in a religious organization should be there for guidelines. And there are certain instances where you need to use discretion and then, do the best thing and the right thing. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so from that point on, I did begin to question why rules have to be so strict and so rigid that we can't have a little autonomy and a little bit of discretion in our own life to make the decision that makes sense in the situation. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where my rebellion, I guess you want to call it that, began. And so I would go and see so many, things that just didn't logically make sense. The biggest one just recently that's happening, all across the country, a lot of, news agencies have put on a top 10 FBI most wanted list, a man named Warren Jeffs. I don't know if you've heard that story much, Greg. But
I followed it when I was in Texas because he has a compound there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, Mr. Jeffs was finally apprehended outside of Las Vegas, and it's just very, very interesting how the mainstream Mormon Church does all in their PR power to make it very clear that there's an arm's length separation there. But that's not really true, because Warren Jeffs' whole mission as what's called a fundamentalist Latter-day Saint movement is to hold sacrosanct or sacred the basic teachings of Brigham Young. Okay? Mm-hmm. As far as polygamy is concerned, as far as temple building and obedience to the hierarchy is concerned, that's what they are all about. If it wasn't for Brigham Young and his teachings in the very first place, it would never have spawned an FLDS church and a top 10 fugitive named Warren Jeffs. Now, I just emailed to you a very interesting mainstream media news clip that I'm sure you'll find very interesting.
All right, well, listen, we're going to take another break. We'll be back with a True Ott on the Investigative Journal in 4 minutes.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, folks, we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on this July 3rd, 2019 day on our calendar, a day before Independence Day, where President Trump is going to roll out the heavy armor and Washington tanks and all of this military hardware going to be displayed. You know, you're used to seeing that in Russia and China and North Korea, but America has a long tradition of it too. You'll find that we've rolled out the tanks for the inauguration for President Eisenhower as well as President Kennedy. Well, Trump's renewing that, showing American strength. And what do you think about that? Well, anyway, let's get back to A True Ott. I'm going back to an old interview I did because it never was on YouTube. And I think it's really good information about the Jesuit connection to the Mormon Church. And True uncovered some unbelievable evidence through some of his relatives, old relatives, about how the Jesuits could have been involved in even the Book of Mormon, as well as the early founders of maybe teaching them, well, you know something, we know how to make religions, we've been doing it a while. So anyway, let's get back to A True Ott, going back a number of years, but a story still relevant today.
True, we have about 11 minutes, and I wanted to have you basically touch on several points, this connection that you found between the Vatican and the Jesuit order in your church. Also, how you felt the hierarchy of your church was not was basically corrupted, and how you found that out. And thirdly, a little bit about this book that you now have out, and I want people to know where they can get that. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, just I must say that my maternal great-great-great-grandfather, fifth generation, was a very close associate to Brigham Young in early Utah. He was the first territorial marshal of Utah and the first postmaster of the Utah Territory. He kept prodigious notes and journals. We, as a family, have kept those. We have a tendency in the Mormon Church to do a lot of ancestor worship. We elevate our pioneer ancestors to almost mythical status, which is, sometimes not a bad thing to do. It's good to know where you came from and that type of thing. But golly, he had references where he carried very, very important documents to the personal attention of Brigham Young from the Jesuit General in America by the name of Peter D. Smith. Also, there was also a very strong link to and in addition to Peter D. Smith, the Jesuit General, there was also a link, a lot of correspondence going between Albert Pike, the head of Freemasonry in America. It's just interesting when you talk about the Illuminati, how much of an elevated position Albert Pike has been given in Washington, D.C. Right there by the Lincoln Memorial is a statue and a monument to Albert Pike. Who was this man? All he did was really help foment the Civil War and cause a lot of bloodshed and tears. Why is this man such a hero? Okay, dig into that. Read Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma if you can stomach it and get through it. And the blueprint of controlling America through their religious system and the school and education system, and it's a blueprint. It's happened. So here is Peter D. Smith, the Jesuit General, in a three-way communication between the Vatican, between Albert Pike and Brigham Young. It's just there. It's happened. It's the facts. It's true. Okay. Mormonism, folks, the temple ceremony is so secret, is really nothing more than Albert Pike resurrected Freemasonry. It's what it is. Joseph Smith became a Freemason. He introduced the temple ceremony after becoming a Master Mason. Brigham Young, Heber C. Kimball, all of the primary hierarchy of the early Mormon Church were all high-degree Masons taking marching orders from Albert Pike. That's anybody with half an ounce of brain power can figure that one out by doing a little bit of study. Okay, it's fact. So from there you begin to wonder, well, where does who's really calling the shots? I do agree with your assessment, Greg, that I think the power behind the scenes is the Black Pope, the Jesuit General. Did you ever get a chance to interview Brother Kolbenbach?
No,
I know you were trying to.
Yeah, I've sent him. I had to go through the channels. I had to go to Washington, and he has a representative there in Washington, and they turned me down officially, stating that he's a very busy man and could not grant me the interview. So at least I tried. And at this point, I sent a letter asking if I could talk to the head in Washington, and they don't respond to me when I say that. So lately I've just been trying to talk to the heads of each of the 10 different Jesuit districts. And I tell you, it's very interesting when you start talking to these people. But anyway, go ahead.
Just again, look at the symbolism, and a clue was given. The Jesuit seal is composed of 5 nails, okay, like crucifixion nails, okay? The crucifixion nails can also be found on the vestment of the Pope when he does the Christmas, the Christmas Mass. These golden spiked nails. Okay, in Mormonism, in the highest order of the temple, you take upon yourself the covenant of the order of the nail. You give and learn about the sure sign of the nail. Okay. You look at the symbolism of what the nail is in the lexicon, the Hebrew terminology. The nail is equivalent to the number 6, which goes back into the whole Antichrist structure of the Greek. Okay, the 6 is also the symbol for El, or the secret name of Lucifer. Right. That's to me, that is the nail in a sure place as far as I'm concerned, about why I could no longer worship blindly. I had to know the truth of these things. So yeah, then it was like the dam broke, Greg, because I began to see the symbolism everywhere. The the number 6, April 6th. The Mormon Church was formed on April 6th with 6 original members, okay? It goes on, the Salt Lake Temple as outlined and set out blueprints by Brigham Young. The 6s are incredibly rampant all over that building. The walls are 6 feet thick, exactly. Coincidence? I don't think so. The 6 spires, the symbolisms in the 6 spires. Mormon writers themselves have told us what the symbolism of the temple really means in the architecture. There's 6 main spires with 12 spires around them for a total of 13. 13 times 6 in the gematria equals 78. 78 is the number of the arcana. The tarot card decks have 78 cards. 78 is a very special number to the Satanists and to the practitioners of witchcraft. 78 is also, by gematria, goes into 6. By 7 plus 8 equals 15. There's 15 general authorities. The first presidency of 3 and the 12 apostles is 15. 1 plus 5 equals 6. I can go on and on and on about the symbolism of 6 in the Mormon Church. I don't believe it's coincidence.
Right. And boy, I'll tell you what, when you started to question, that came down on you hard. You were excommunicated. Your life had been threatened. And to this day, I know you still are searching for the truth. And tell us a little bit about the book you put together and where people might be able to get it.
The book is named, I don't want to steal from Martin Luther King, but it's called Free at Last, because when you know the truth and your soul is understanding it, like I said, the feeling of freedom and release is incredible. And so I put this out not to be an anti-Mormon work. It's a testimony of one man's search for truth. I hope it's taken as that, okay? People ask me all the time, what do you hope to accomplish with this book? It's merely, to me, a way of categorizing my own thoughts, and I read it all the time to ask myself, is this accurate? Is this right? Am I correct in this line of thinking? And so, yeah, I'm offering it as a free manuscript on an ebook type of basis. Anybody that would like to take a look at this.
Is there a website they can go to?
Yeah, it's best to email me directly. It's not on a website right now that I know of. It's though some people have done that. Give us your email.
Can you give us your email?
It's ATRUEOTT, True Ott, at MSNMicrosoftNetwork.com.
Okay. Listen, True, I'm running against the time thing here, and we're about out of time, but I want to say this. Let's come back again for part 2 of this interview. There's much more, a lot of questions I have to ask still, and I will give you a call in the next couple of days, and then we'll set up another interview. Is that okay?
Very good, Greg.
Okay, that was my interview with A. True Ott in 2006, years ago, when the price of gold back then was $586. Price of gold today is $1,400 and some dollars. So, I'll tell you, why didn't I invest in gold? Why do some people are investors, some people aren't, I guess. I hope you invested, because gold has really risen. What was silver back then? It was about 11, I think. Now it's 15. So it stays pretty stable. But anyway, silver gold back in 2006, along with A. True Ott. And I spent many, many hours speaking with True about the truth, about the Mormon Church. And it's an incredible story. You can probably Google him, Google many of my other shows. But there is solid information, factual information, that the Jesuits, the Jesuit General at the time, Albert Pike, as well as the leaders, Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, were in constant communication, creating this church, perhaps. Who wrote the Book of Mormon? That's interesting. And some of their ideas are quite interesting. Jesuits, I always said, are good at 2 things: infiltrating churches and creating new religions. When's their next one? I don't know. They've created the New Age movement, and we know that, through a priest by the name of Father Teilhard D. Chardin, and he is a He is one of Hillary Clinton's mentors and Bill Clinton's mentors. So we know they had their hands in that. They've had their hands in the hippie movement, you name it. They have been involved in it. And it's about time Americans understand that. So, when you say something like satanic worshiping in the Vatican, people's eyebrows raise. When you say it goes on in the Mormon temples, the same thing happens. But there's a close connection between the hierarchy of those two major religions. And some of the things that A. True Ott found out and how he was treated lead me to believe that his story should at least get on the table of discussion, but it doesn't because the controllers cannot have the truth on the table. Just like they suppressed the Bible. You know, I always ask myself why they did that. And, you know, let me give you a quote here from Tucker Saucy. He said, "What makes the Bible such an inviting resource is the vigor with which the rulers of evil have suppressed its unlicensed reading. And it's been my experience that as predictably as such rulers play with the truth, the Bible forthrightly tells it." And as you know, why don't we do a few things? I got a few quotes here from Tucker Saucy's book, The Rulers of Evil and Other Things. As you know, I interviewed Tucker before he passed away, and The Rulers of Evil is a book you have to read. The goddess of Venus, he says, as we've seen, was absorbed by missionary adaptation into the Roman Catholic sacred tradition as the Virgin Mary. And that is Ishtar, the Babylonian Venus. Did you know the symbol of the eagle, folks? Which is a symbol of American freedom, right? Wasn't it also a Roman, yes, a Roman symbol? Was identified with the Babylonian sky god Anu, A-N-N-U. When Anu entered sacred Roman iconography as Jupiter, the eagle was still the mascot. Now, we always talk about the Revolutionary War, but did you realize that the Freemasons were involved in this, inciting this Boston Tea Party? And during the night of December 16, 1773, a gang of Indians climbed aboard certain ships in the Boston harbor, built in 342 of the East India Company's tea chests, and threw overboard their contents valued at about $90,000. Well, they looked like Indians, and witnesses thought they were Indians, but the big open secret was that they were Freemasons in disguise. Perhaps the most succinct statement on the subject appears in a respected Masonic historian, Arthur Waite's New Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. The Boston Tea Party was entirely Masonic, he says, carried out by the members of the St. John's Lodge during an adjourned meeting. And another quote from Tucker Saucy, we have to remember, don't forget Charles Thompson's candid assessment that the Revolution's leaders were largely deceptions, men of supposed wisdom and valor, who were far inferior to the qualities that have been ascribed to them. And let me tell you something, Charles Thompson knew everything as he was the main recorder of events during that period of time. Look up Charles Thompson, and you're going to find some interesting quotes. And my favorite Jesuit, Lorenzo Ricci. Oh, he was a trip, wasn't he? Faked his death, came back, and had to tell Franklin and everybody what to do. The war was on, but from Lorenzo Ricci's vantage point, the war was won. There remained only opportunities now for his enemies, the British Crown and the American colonials, to engage in bloodletting hostilities that would eventually separate and exhaust them both, divide and conquer. What to the British was the War of American Rebellion, and to Americans the War for Independence, was to Jesuit General Ricci the War of Reunification with Protestant dissidents. From it would rise the first Febronian government on the earth. Yes, we're celebrating that independence, right? From the Jesuit point of view, it was different, right? From it would rise the first government like this on earth, a constellation of secular churches called states, led by an electorate of laymen properly enlightened by the Ratio Studiorum and united under the spiritual guidance of Pontifex Maximus. and paying tribute to Rome for the privileged United States. The real war over, there began now the unraveling, which was the historical war, the theatrical war. What about this East India Company? Did it have Jesuit connections? East India Company was a major subsidizer of the Jesuit mission to Beijing. The Jesuits, in turn, interceded with Oriental monarchs to secure lucrative commercial favors for the companies, including monopolies on tea, spices, saltpeter for explosives, silks, and the world's opium trade. Indeed, the company appears to owe its very existence to the Society of Jesus. I thought these guys were priests. And another interesting quote, the fact that Americans were trained and habituated to oppose the British Crown and the Church of England, not by Roman Catholics, but by Protestant churchmen, is, to my mind, proof of the Sun Tzuian ingenuity of Lorenzo Ricci. Prior to Lorenzo Ricci's ascension to the Black Papacy in 1758, the colonists had been blissfully loyal to the mother country, yet with the rise of Ricci, as if in preparation for the absurdities to come, radical propagandists began appearing throughout the colonies. Christopher Gadsden in South America, Cornelius Harnett in North Carolina, Patrick Henry, Thomas Jefferson in Virginia, and in Pennsylvania, Charles Thompson. Thus, well before the advent of much to rebel against, well before the writs of assistance and the royal proclamation, the propaganda of American rebellion was being organized already. In July 1776, Adams would declare that the enforcement of the Butte's writs of assistance in 1761 was the commencement of this controversy between Great Britain and America. Just a few quotes there. And a number of more. These bring up some really good points we've talked about over the years. Freemasonry was the natural, the reasonable, the only intelligent way for the Roman Catholic Church to control the ongoing affront of Protestantism and to increase in divine right kings heading their own national churches, independent of Vatican control, and the incredible explosion of international mercantilism. Like the aquatic creature whose mouth resembles a comfortable resting place to its prey, the lodges were a sagacious recycling of the old Templar infrastructure into a dynamic spiritual and economic brotherhood that gave Protestants, Jews, Buddhists, Muslims, agnostics, and anyone else an opportunity to build a better life outside of Roman Catholicism, yet still under the Church's superintending eye and control. To defeat Great Britain without a battle, Lorenzo Ricci required the abilities and resources of an important Maryland family. The Caro family. Yes, they own the land where Washington, D.C. is on right now. That's why when you say, were this formed by the Catholics? Yes. By the Jesuits? Yes. Anyway, so we got all of these interests. Ricci he knew the circumstances had reached the point at which there was nothing which his enemy, the forces of Protestantism on both sides of the Atlantic, could do to alter the outcome. He was like a chess master, says Saucy in this quote, who sees the inevitability of checkmate 4 moves ahead and reveals his winning method out of the courtesy to the eminent loser. And he submits that infiltration of America was brilliantly designed and commanded by a man I'm pleased to honor as American Republic's least known founding father, Lorenzo Ricci. Go back to some of my old shows, some that I interviewed Tupper Saucy, some that I commented much on what he wrote and added certain things that I found out. Regarding Lorenzo Ricci's faked death and his infiltration into America as the professor during the time of the Continental Congress and the formation of this country, when everyone thought he was dead. It's an interesting historical fact that's even not adopted or even covered up by so-called Jesuit historians who are opposed to the Roman Catholic Church. And you can go and see why I think this main story needs to be really investigated. Who was Lorenzo Ricci, and did he have what Was he the mastermind behind the revolution and many other revolutions going on at the same period of time in the history of the world? Now, of the 2.5 million enumerated inhabitants in 1787 America, the Roman Catholic population consisted of no more than 16,000 in Maryland, 7,000 in Pennsylvania, 1,500 in New York, and 200 in Virginia. Once the Constitution was in place, a steady influx of European immigrants transformed Roman Catholicism from America's smallest to largest religious denomination by 1850. The higher powers in Rome could view the United States as a viable tributary, if not another papal state. Well, look at what they did. They forced that immigration into America, right? Many were loyal to the Roman Catholic Church. And then, what has Rome grown to? What has the Vatican grown to in America today? Just think about that. What about this illegal immigration now? Are they doing the same thing in 2019, but for the same purpose? But what can they do? Flood all these people in and basically turn the country into a socialist state, because all these people who came from really hellholes that the Vatican also had an instrumental role in creating problems in Nicaragua, Honduras, etc. These people are easy to control. Get rid of white middle class. They know too much. They won't put up with it. Take their guns and get them out of here. Back into. That's what you got to look forward to on Independence Day tomorrow. See you. Let's see, on Friday on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.